listening to the Straight to Video podcast with Rob Lane.
Hey there, how's it going? And welcome to another Straight to Video podcast. So on today's show, I get to introduce you all to bass player extraordinaire Rev Jones, who checks in with me all the way from his home in Oklahoma. Rev has just released his brand new album in the key of Z, or as us folks in the UK would say, in the key of Z. It's a mind melt of tunes with Rev's personality stamped all over it, with his off-the-wall, mind-blowing bass playing, heavy metal vocals, and an amazing array of guest artists, including Russ Parrish, or as many of you will know him, Satchel from Steel Panther, and Bill Levity from Firehouse, lending some lead guitar work, and Rev's longtime musical partner Jeff Martin of Racer X on drums. So how does Rev know all these guys? Well, since picking up the bass in the mid-80s, Rev dived headfirst into speed metal before becoming the go-to guy in a variety of musical styles, all the way through country and hard rock, and he's been the bassist for the likes of Michael Schenker and MSG, Steelheart, the late Leslie West and Mountain, along with countless others. He's also the guitar tech for George Thorogood, so even when he's not playing, he is always out on the road. Before we dive into this fun chat with Rev, I want to let you know our friends at Dead Skull Coffee continue to offer listeners to this podcast 15% off any order of their ground or full bean rock and roll coffee. Simply head on over to deadskullcoffee.co.uk and add the discount code STV on checkout to grab all that sweet money off and support a great independent business at the same time. Also, if you can please check out the Straight to Video Patreon page, which gives you early access to guests, a bonus podcast, one of which will be dropping this week in time for Halloween, along with some exclusive merch which you won't find anywhere else. All of this can be found at patreon.com/STVpod. Okay, let's check in with Rev Jones, who was super bubbly and a ton of fun when we spoke and had some really fun stories to share about his career and his new album. For more information, you can find him at revjones.com, which has all the details about his new album in the key of Z. But in the meantime, I want you to hear his story as we dive into my straight-to-video chat with bassist Rev Jones.
What's happening? How are you?
I'm good. I thought we were having an impromptu bass session then.
Oh.
I was ready to go.
If I had my amp hooked up, I would play something.
How you doing, man? You all right?
I'm good. You?
Yeah, I'm good, mate. That's a fine setup you've got in the background with the basses and the Beatles.
Yeah, oh, yeah.
Can't go wrong there.
Yeah, there you go. Exactly. It's my Beatle wall.
Yeah. Have you seen the trailer for that new Disney Plus thing that's coming out?
The Get Back? Yeah, I have. I've seen just the ad for it, but I hadn't got a chance to click on it yet.
It looks insane. It almost looks like it's a new film in a way. It's like, it's so surreal in my opinion.
Oh, yeah.
Kind of weird to see all that kind of stuff.
I know. I have all those old, the movies they shot, same footage of them doing those albums and stuff. And whenever I see it, like when they re-release something from it, it's like, wow, that doesn't even look the same.
And just to see him like coming up with ideas for songs which are just embedded in just the general pop culture, it's crazy.
Oh, I know. I always think about when I was young, I used to play in this country band, like playing 5 days a week, just playing, 4 or 5 sets of cover songs, And our singer, he got signed by this, actually by a songwriter in Nashville. And so the guy signed 4 or 5 different singers and had them all record the same album, So I was there, we recorded these songs, and then they actually shopped it to see which singer would get the deal. And so it ended up being a George Strait album. But it was funny because, he was a big songwriter guy. I don't even remember his name, but he had wrote songs for George Strait before, but he did the same thing, and he had sent these songs and we all had to learn them. And it's funny when I think back, when I hear those songs now, because they were all big hits with George Strait. And I think about, wow, I did those songs in the early form of,
That's crazy.
Yeah.
When was that exactly?
Probably 88, 89, because I was in, or maybe 1990. I'm going to age myself backwards. 1990, because I was in a speed metal band called Forte. And then I played in a country band, 5 days a week so I could be in a speed metal band.
Was that out in Oklahoma?
Yeah, here in Oklahoma, yeah.
Is that where you've like always been from, born and raised, stayed there?
Oh, yeah. Yeah, I still live here. I lived in Germany for a little bit playing with MSG,
Okay.
Used to kind of live outside of LA a little bit, I'd kind of go back and forth. I mean, the majority of my adulthood, I was on tour, so I really didn't live anywhere. I would have a residence, somewhere, but I was, with MSG, we would tour between 200 and 300 shows every year.
Wow.
And I did that for like 10 years, 12 years, maybe skipped a year right in the middle, but it was good.
How was it coming back home to Oklahoma? Is this something you enjoy about coming back to that place?
Oh, yeah. The cost of living is good here. So for the same money that I can have a big house here, I would have an apartment in LA. That's why I won't live in LA.
Are you near to where you grew up?
Yeah, probably like 20 minutes. I'm the 2 towns over. It's a small town, but it's where the University of Oklahoma is at. So it's small, but everything's here. Right past my neighborhood is country, I guess, it's where it starts just getting farmhouses and lakes and, so I live near pavement.
Right.
I'm like 1 minute from anything,
Sweet. And I guess I was speaking to somebody else the other day who's actually moved to Dallas, and I guess it's similar for you in the middle of the country. That's kind of convenient now because a lot of gigs and tours are like these fly dates, so it cuts down all your travel time and you're pretty close to everywhere. Yeah, it's always been. I mean, I still know a lot of people that, that live in Oklahoma that I kind of grew up with. The band Seether, John Humphrey, the drummer, Three Doors Down, Greg, the drummer, we all kind of grew up. We're all same age. We grew up playing in cover bands together. And oh, sweet, man.
Jerry Cantrell, he just lives not too far from here, So it's, it's kind of if you grew up here and you start getting money, you realize, all right, I don't want to live there. I'd rather live here. I guess it's fun if you were young and you're living in Hollywood because there's all the going out, but I go out about never.
Me too.
Yeah, I mean, me and the wife went out last night for dinner. It was like, woo!
You're exhausted the day after. It's like, whoa.
Yeah. Yeah. Plus, I have a 5-year-old, so he's like twice as energetic and crazy as me. So my wife is a very strong woman. Superb,
man. Superb. Any signs of musical talent from a 5-year-old?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah?
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah. He plays everything, sings, writes stuff.
What catches his ear?
Everything. It's pretty cool. I got to show you something. Whenever he was born, I had Dean make this for him.
Dude.
It's the exact copy of the one behind it.
Oh, that's amazing.
So he's kind of trapped. Of course, I told him that's not going to help in the banking world where he needs to be.
Because your family are fairly musical though, right? With both your dad and your grandfather.
Yeah, my dad's side of the family, they all played. My dad, he was a really good singer, just plays, the rhythm stuff. But I grew up listening to all that. My grandpa, he played about every instrument, I think. Even my dad's mom, she played, all my uncles. So when I was a kid, I'd learn chords, and then I had no desire in doing it. I loved music, but I wrestled and martial arts and baseball and, so I didn't want anything to do with music. But then whenever I kind of changed my mind, I guess I had a head start, because I already knew some of this stuff throughout my life.
You took it for granted in a way growing up.
Yeah, but since I wrestled and did martial arts and all that, I learned how to learn. I learned how to get better at things. So when I started playing, 6 months later, I was playing everything I play now. I just hadn't perfected it. I was already doing crazy stuff. It's more that dedication that people don't learn these days. If you can turn on YouTube and, even if you learn how to do something wrong, eventually you're going to get to the point where, you realize that's wrong and you fix it. But you really never develop the same kind of learning ability, of the old days when you'd put on vinyl. You'd have to move the needle back and listen and,
For me, it was on cassette tape originally, just rewind. Nowadays, if I've got to learn some songs, I'm probably learning it from some 15-year-old kid on YouTube because it's so faster. They've already done the bass cover for it. I'm like straight in there. It's like crazy.
It is awesome that people can do that. I wish that in the old days you could, when the guitar books would come out that had tab of how to do something.
I got all mine down here.
Yeah. And that was cool because you didn't have to sit and learn it, especially if it was something hard. What was bad is that you never any of the cool bass stuff was in there. Like it would be all the guitar stuff, and then one song would have bass. And usually it was something that was cool, but I'd already learned. There was a couple of times that it was something really cool. And I'm like, oh, finally, I can see if I was right. Even if I already knew it, I would check it and see. But at the same time, there was I still remember I have a collection of the Guitar Player magazines from the first issue up till about 84. There's one that came out in 83, and it was an Eddie Van Halen issue. So it had Eruption in it, and it was transcribed by Steve Vai, who nobody really knew at the time, because this was pre-Alcatraz, I mean, he had played in Zappa, but most people didn't really know the name. And I still go back, and every time I see it, I still open it because it's funny because he teaches you how to play it, but he teaches it on a different string. He teaches it how he would have played. It's the same notes. Eddie Van Halen does it all on one string, all the tapping part, and he does it on two. And it's so funny because nowadays they would go, oh, that's wrong. It's wrong. But it's not really wrong. It's all on how you play it.
Yeah, he just learnt it by ear. He wasn't watching any videos or anything like that. Well, that's the same notes.
Yeah, and in a sense, it kind of makes more sense because you're moving less.
Like you say, you was into like sports and stuff. You'd grown up around music. So when was it you kind of like that switch flicked and you started focusing on it? Was it like the mid 80s? Yeah,
I was 15, right when I got in high school. So in that time frame, if you wanted to wrestle, you had to cut your hair short. You had to have super good grades. So that's that time period where now you're starting to have a job and you're starting to go out with girls and hang out with your buddies. So I kind of started losing a little interest for the sports, but I always loved music because I started going to concerts when I was like a little kid. I mean, when I was 10, 11 years old, we went to every concert.
What was your first one?
I seen Yes when I was like 5, I think. Elvis, the last tour, Kenny Rogers, all these kind of people like that, and then it just kept evolving to like REO Speedwagon. And then, I'd see Kiss, but the heavy bands started coming around. So I started going to see, I remember seeing UFO, Saxon, Iron Maiden.
What Maiden tour was it on?
I'm pretty sure it was Killers, or it might have been Number of the Beast. I seen Maiden every year, but I can't remember which one was UFO, Iron Maiden, and Saxon, but it was all like one show. I mean, I seen them all. I seen Sabbath with Dio. The next day I wore that shirt, got kicked out of school because, it was very satanic. And, we would go see, it didn't matter if it was Judas Priest or if it was Dan Fogelberg. We went and seen every concert.
Was there like a venue which you always went to? Is the arena or was it an outdoor place?
Well, there was a couple arenas. Actually, one of the arenas is about 1 mile from me right now where I live at. I'd have my dad, we'd all get a ride from my dad to the concert. He'd always say, well, you better have a ride home. I'm not coming all the way back here. Oh, yeah, okay. And then, so after the show, we couldn't find a ride. So we'd have to wait a certain amount of time and then call my dad and say, oh, his dad can't come get us. And all right, I'll be there. And then he'd get there real quick. So I knew he was probably right down the street.
He'd figured you out. He was keeping an eye on you.
But yeah, but they were, my parents were awesome. My first bands, we used to practice in my bedroom. I'd take my bed, lean it against the wall, and we'd set the drums up. We'd practice. My dad was in the next room watching TV. He just turned the volume up because he's always supportive of everything. But he told me early on, when I said, I'm going to play music, he told me, look forward to a life of poverty. Yeah. I mean, he basically was telling me, make sure that that's really what you want to do, figure out a backup plan or figure out how to make money.
Did you ever have one of those?
I have a bunch of them. What was awful is that whenever this whole quarantine hit, I realized that all of my backup plans are in the same.
Ah, shit.
So I couldn't really teach because nobody was, doing lessons. I couldn't go work a concert doing lighting or even as a stagehand because there was no concerts. I couldn't play cover gigs. Even though some places they were still playing, but I really couldn't take the chance of some idiot coming up getting me sick. So I realized, I have a backup plan and it failed. I mean, I made it through fortunately I had enough money, saved and it's cool because that's when I recorded this new album.
Excellent stuff.
Yeah. I mean, I'd already planned on doing it around the same time anyway, but I just had so much time of sitting around that I was like, all right, I'm going to start doing this and,
really focus on it.
Yeah. I started writing the songs and a couple of them I'd had for a while that I just had never either finished or I'd wrote with another band, but then we didn't end up using it. So I went back and just kind of, made them more now, I guess. I probably had another 8 songs that could have made it on there, but at the same time, I'm like, well, I just keep going. I'm never going to put it out or I'm going to say.
You have a double album.
The Quad.
Like working on the next Yes album.
It's a Quad album. So I think it came out. I mean, it came out good. It's funny because it's kind of got after all the songs were done and I was finishing up the vocals and recording, and I started thinking, wow, it's almost kind of like a concept album, even though it was definitely not written that way. It just kind of, I guess it was because of the things going on and everywhere in the world that I would try to think of a line, and it would spark off of something stupid or that everybody would be talking about or something funny or whatever.
Have you always written then? Have you always wrote songs straight from the get-go? Or, because I mean, you've kind of gone into this career of what's often referred to as like the hired gun kind of thing.
That is a problem. Like my first couple of bands I was ever in, I wrote everything. Me and that band Forte, that I did 3 albums with them. We were on Massacre in Germany, and real big in that early 90s, speed metal, kind of the Halloween style. So I wrote. When I got Black Symphony, Rick, the guitar player, he wrote the majority of stuff because it was his band. But after that first or second album, I started writing more. And actually, a couple of the songs on the new record were written during one of those writing sessions. And we had actually demoed them, but we ended up not using it because it didn't really sound like Black Symphony. It sounded like Rev Jones, I still write stuff all the time. And if I pull out a hard drive, put it in, there's probably folder after folder full of songs.
Forgot about that one.
Yeah. And I mean, so it's one of those things, all these years of touring and stuff, I wouldn't write as much, or I would write something and it would just stay in my mind. I just wouldn't do it. And part of the reason I even started doing them was I had a Rev Jones band. When I wasn't on tour, I would book shows around here. I actually had a singer and, a drummer and guitar player. And we would do MSG and all the bands that I played with. So I'd started just recording some of these songs I'd wrote. Hey, let's do this. And that's how my last album was done. I had one of my buddies, Jim Dofka. I'd send him the stuff to play solos on it just for a demo. And he was like, man, you got to put this out. So I let him mix it and put it out. It did great.
And that was the Backwash album, right?
Yeah. So yeah, that was one of the people that didn't make it on this. I wanted Jim to play, at least a solo on this, but he was real swamped with work because he teaches. He's got a huge music school, so he was dealing with that. Just other things, plus his 2 bands that he was recording. So he didn't make it on. Actually, Leslie West was going to play on a song, but it was like we were 2 weeks out from going to record the Leslie album, and then he passed away. And it was like right around Christmas. So I didn't even finish the song. I mean, I'm probably going to put it out later because it's done. I just have to sing to it and put solos on it. And then, and Joey Allen from Warren, he was going to be on it. And then he got same deal. He got swamped with, just so much work that, I was kind of hitting the deadline. And that's when I had Robbie Lochner. He used to be in Fight and he plays for Jack Russell, Great White.
There's always somebody else in the little address book.
Yeah. Oh, well, cool. I mean, it's funny because I'd called a bunch of my friends and had 15, 16 people for sure. Yeah, I want to do something. So, all right, now I got the songs that I'm going to do. Then I had to go, okay, who's going to sound best on this?
Who's going to bring something to it?
Yeah, because I didn't want to have somebody who's a, amazing player play over something that's not going to show off.
It's that fine line, really. I mean, yes, it would be cool to have this name on it, but that's just to have the name on it. You want to be true to yourself creative-wise. And like,
yeah.
Is this going to be right for this song? Is this guy going to be right on this song?
Exactly. I had, I got Bill from Firehouse, Bill Everty. He played on it. He's amazing. I love his playing, but that was one of the ones that I was like, man, I got to find the right one that's going to fit him, because if it's too heavier of a part, he's not going to get to show his, even though it would have still been amazing no matter what he played on. And then I nailed it down to, okay, this is a kind of a weird riff, and I sent it to him saying, how about this? Even though it's a little out of your pocket, I know that you'll do something cool. And it's one of my favorites on there.
You're mentioning all these dudes, Bill Leverty, Joey Allen. I can only think that these guys are so far away from your musical stuff originally. Is this all through your being with Steelheart? You kind of got introduced to all these guys.
I know Joey and Bill both from, of course, we toured together lots of times with Steelheart, but I met Joey back. I met him before I was even playing with any famous band, but we became real good friends when I was playing with Michael Schenker, because at the time, Pete Holmes was the drummer with MSG, and he was from Black and Blue. And the singer, Jamie St. James from Black and Blue, was singing in Warren. So we used to see him all the time, And Bill, I met him because he came up to me at a show, and he had seen me play with Michael and knew who he was right off. So we became friends. Most of the guys I've known for quite a while, like Russ Parrish, Satchel. I met him back when he played with Fight, but I mostly knew him because he was always around LA. And me and Jeff Martin, the drummer, singer for Racer X, they were always best friends. So whenever I was in LA, we would go and watch Russ. He was in a disco band that played at the Viper Room.
He's done so many styles. He's done like the fight stuff. He did all that stuff with like Thornbirds and all that kind of thing as well.
And it's funny. All his, like his solo normal stuff was always like nothing similar to everything else, that he does. But disco band, it was funny because they played the Viper Room every Monday or whatever, and it was sold out. Every time you'd have to wait, even being on the guest list, you'd wait in line to pay $10 to be on the guest list, because, the Viper Room is real small, but it was exactly how Steel Panther is, except it was disco. And I mean, it was actually funnier. I mean, the reason is because that's Russ. He is that way 24/7. Every time I ever talk to him, he's just improvised in life, but we would go see them. And then they started doing, Metal Shop, which was Steel Panther at the beginning. They were doing Metal Shop, and then Travis, the bass player, his band, he sang in like the M80s or something. They did like the top, the new wave stuff, and then they would do the disco. So those two bands were open, and then all of a sudden, Metal Shop became the
hot ticket in town. It just kept growing and growing.
The one that took over, yeah, and they stopped doing the other stuff. It's funny because I was there. It was either the very first Metal Shop rehearsal or maybe the second one when I met Jeff Martin. I went out and played with Black Symphony for the first time, and we were at the same rehearsal place. And I didn't see Rush yet. I just seen Ralph, and at the time it was Ray Legier playing drums, and Travis, and they were out there and they were listening to Dawkins or something, and they were like, "This is going to be great. We're going to do this." And all I could think to me is just these guys that are doing a cover band or something. And I'm thinking, God, I hate LA. It's exactly the same as it ever was. Then we get inside and realize, oh, it's Russ's new band. He comes over and, watches this rehearse for a little bit, and then he goes back over. And then Halford actually was in town and come and got Jeff and him, and they went and ate. And it's funny when I think back now that it's, it seemed like such a stupid, funny joke that, would last for 5 minutes.
Yeah,
and
you never know.
When it's still going on.
You never know.
When it's still going on, I was like, wow. So it's awesome. I'm glad, I loved it to see friends succeed in something like that, and they knew when they changed the name, they had a contract with somebody else and that wanted to expand and have a bunch of bands doing it.
To franchise it kind of thing.
Yeah. And they knew, we don't want to do that. We're going to be huge. It's going to be something that we're set for a while.
That's one thing. The thing which makes it work is the guys in that band and the interaction. You can't duplicate that.
Yeah, exactly. Well, I think that's their deal right now because they're looking for a bass player. And that's the hardest thing is because they're not trying to find a bass player like, how Travis was. They're not wanting that. They're kind of wanting something completely different or just so completely opposite that it works, So, I came up with the whole character and a backstory and for me being in it.
Oh, man, that'd be great.
It would be fun, but I don't think that's what they're looking for. I think they're looking for something completely different than anybody expects. Everybody's going to go in and they're going to try to, do all the, all the sprinkler rock stuff and, jump around trying to be cool and sexy. And hell, they probably want a robot or something or a computer. They just want an old Mac that you hit go on and the Mac starts
have
playing.
A hologram or something like that.
It's just strings playing on that. Something like that it seems weird when you think about it, but the way that those guys think, that's the next level of how it would be, just have a hologram of somebody or a cardboard cutout.
We'll see. Who knows? I'm excited to see what they do.
Yeah.
Because it's not just getting someone to play the tunes or even look cool. They've got to get that character in there as well.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
We'll see. We'll see. I just want to talk about some more of your early steps into bass. Who were some of your early influences on bass? Because I think you mentioned a guy called, is it Tony Levin, who did King Crimson and Peter Gabriel? Or?
Yeah. Tony's my favorite. It's kind of a weird way to try to think of how to explain what it is because most of the stuff that he plays that I like is so simple, but it's more of his choice of notes and his choice of how it sits in the song. Like even something like Sledgehammer. Boom, ba-boo-doom, boom. Boom, ba-boom, boo-doom, boo-doom. And he's playing it with an octave pedal on it, and he's on a fretless. So even though that's such a simple bass line, it grooves so much that it doesn't jump out at you. So in other words, if you're listening to something like Sly Stone, and you hear boom, 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 do-do-do, boom, boom, that's all you hear the whole song. Because then the vocals start singing it and it still stands out so much. But when you hear something that you're not sure why it is, it's that one of the boom, ba-do-do-dum, dum, boom, ba-boom. When he starts singing, you can have it, it's so different from what that is. The drum beat, everything, the guitar part, everything they're so different that's not the part that's jumping out anymore at you. But somehow that groove and the way that it falls into cycle of the rhythm just keeps the wheels going, I guess, it's that difference. A lot of bass players like that. You can hear a bass player that is playing the most simple song in the world, but if he's a great bass player, when he plays that part, it's going to seem different.
Mm-hmm.
It's all in the hands. I recorded at Paul Gilbert's house one time with him. We were doing pre-production for one, and a lot of those songs, even though you think of him as this ripping guitar player, a lot of those songs were real Beatle-y, like they had kind of pop stuff. And so my natural instinct was to dome, ba-boom, boom, boom, woo, woo, doing like a Paul McCartney thing. And when we were listening back, he stopped and he was saying, man, you got it. And I said, got what? He was saying that, it's in the hands. It's that he can play that same part and it's not going to sound the same. That actually helped me even realize deeper into, what I already knew, but wasn't aware of things. So there's like an underlying thing that you pick up from people. I can sit and play a Jocko song, note for note, and it will not sound like Jocko. It'll sound like Rev Jones. I mean, same deal. There's a Michael Mannering. I'm not sure if you're familiar with him. Amazing bass player, does both hands, changes his tuning. He's crazy kind of guy. And he actually took lessons from Jocko way back in the day. And when you hear him do one of those songs, it doesn't sound like Jocko. It sounds like him.
That's great when you're at that point, though, where you can make it sound like yourself. That's awesome.
Yeah, that's what my favorite thing about playing with Leslie West all those years was. I mean, I love bass on all the songs. Felix, I love all the stuff, especially the West Bruce Lang. Jack Bruce is just amazing. And it's not what he plays, it's how it sounds. Almost all those songs anybody can play. You can learn it and play it, but it's not going to sound the same. But if you're doing a Politician or dum bum bum bum, you're doing that. It's got to have. You got to know where it's at. And then when he starts singing on top of it, oh man,
everything's pulling just in the right way.
Yeah. It's like, oh, that's what makes it. That's what makes it unbelievable. And Leslie told me great stories about him too. He said that when he would go in and do his vocals on the West Bruce Lang stuff, it would just be, okay, first take. And then, all right, let's put a harmony, first take. Let's put another one. And that out in the fields or whatever that song is, it's got that huge 12-piece harmony. It's all him. And he said it was pretty much first take on every bit of it. So that just made me hate him more. No.
What was the LP, which was like a really big bass LP for you, where he's like, I've got to learn this whole thing?
Yeah, well, like I said, being a big Yes fan because of the first shows. To this day, I mean, Chris Squire, when I go back and play those songs, I love Yes anyway. They're all still cool bass lines, Plus his harmonies that he sang always jump out at, so like I'd went and learned all that stuff, even though I'm not per se like a big Steve Harris fan now. When I was growing up, when I first started playing.
Seeing him on stage, I want to be that guy.
I knew, oh yeah. Well, what's funny is it was actually Pete Way. I wanted to be Pete Way and Steve Harris wanted to be Pete Way too. No, but I think the reason I loved it so much when I was young is because the bass stands out so much because the songs are really written around because he writes them. So there's all these cool bass lines that at that time in the 80s, everybody stopped playing bass and just started dun, 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 dun. So guys like him and Geddy Lee, Chris Squire, all those guys stood out more because the bass is doing something. So, I mean, I can tell you that when I was in my teens, I knew every Iron Maiden song inside and out. As I got older, I still do this to this day, is that I'll start thinking, oh man, something will come back. So I'll go and learn a whole album. Say I pick John Paul Jones. So I'll just pick one of the albums and I'll go learn all the songs exactly how he played it for no other reason except almost study it in my, like it's one of those things you can't really teach somebody that. You can learn the notes and you can play it, but it's why the note's there kind of thing. Like I'm not a big Zeppelin fan. I love the songs and I love every member, like all they're playing. It's not my thing. AC/DC is great. I sing all those songs when I go jam with cover bands. Not really one of my bands. Kiss, not really one of my bands, but I know every song, know everything about them. I don't hate them. It's not like one of these bands that I can't stand. Oh man, I don't want to hear that. But just was, like King Crimson. I actually liked them mostly because of the lineup that was Tony Levin and Adrian Belew, all those frame by frame, all those cool songs. It was so weird. Part of it's because of King Crimson thing of Robert Fripp. I love everything. Once I learned that, I went back and learned it. But adding in Tony Levin just seals the deal. But then Adrian Belew, there's just something awesome about Adrian Belew's voice and the way he sings. I can hear it right now. You'd start playing it and I'd stop and listen, it's just how it is. Then I started playing. So right around that same time I started playing, I started meeting guys in bands, hanging out with them, critiquing them. And they'd be like, well, why don't you get a band? You're going to tell us that we suck. Why don't you get a band? I will.
You was that forward with people even before you?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh yeah. I mean, and most of them, only some of them were not good. some of them sound exactly the same to this day. I can go down the street and they're playing. I'm like, God, you still haven't worked on it. And then some of them have evolved and became way better. But so at that time, it was that mid 80s stuff. So, you had like Rat and Crew and those kind of bands that were all real popular in the heavy rock, I guess. But I was already into, before that, like Diamond Head, Saxon, and all those bands. So Metallica came out.
You was all in.
Yeah, Slayer. And it's funny because I loved Slayer when I was young, up through Rain and Blood. I loved I know every one of those songs. Then I just it fell off because it just really wasn't my thing anymore. But it's funny because I went to the farewell tour or whatever they did, the last one they did. And I took my wife who'd never seen Slayer, never really heard Slayer. It was actually pretty good. That's old Slayer fans when we were young would be crazy and carving it. And now they're all old and they kind of stand there like this. And I was like, wow, we can stand up front,
Awesome. Was there kind of like a good little scene then? You say you see these guys in clubs and stuff like that. Was there a good little club scene around where you were growing up?
Yeah, because the thing is when you're in the Midwest, even though when I first started, you had the metal clubs. So if you wanted to play metal songs, you could only play at a metal club. If you wanted to hear them, you could only play there because the top 40 was U2 and that kind of stuff. There was no crossover, just like country back then was only country. So in a sense, it made it a little better. But there was these clubs that you could go play 3 sets and you could do Metallica, Motley Crue, Sabbath, whatever, and play your own songs. So we were seeing like Pantera, I grew up with those guys because they're right in Dallas. And I watched them go from being Kiss, Van Halen to being Priest to being Pantera. You'd go see them in a club and it was amazing. Same with, there was a band, Ratch Out America. They were like the biggest, most awesome club band back then. You'd go see them and nobody was tighter than them. They were all hair farmers. They all had hair down here and it was all perfectly swirling. There was no counts. They just into song and the next one, gung, 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 gung. And it was so great. Shannon Larkin was the drummer, plays for Godsmack. And Brad, the singer bass player, he's actually a big sound guy. He worked for Motley Crue forever. He's like one of the top front of house guys that tour. And then I think one of the guitar players plays country. The other one builds motorcycles. But they were so awesome. It was like seeing Judas Priest in a club.
How old was you when that was happening?
I was 17, 18. So I was playing the same places, but that advantage of that in this area, and it would kind of go, like all through Texas, Oklahoma, like through St. Louis, up into Ohio, across Pennsylvania, over to the East Coast. And you would kind of do this little thing, play here, play there, 2 or 3 nights, following some of these bands, seeing them. But the thing is they were all so good on stage that if you wanted to compete, you had to be that good.
You had to step up.
Yeah. I mean, we would go to LA and I'd see these bands and they were great bands, but they would stand there because they didn't have anything that made them have to be that way. Like that thing prior to that or the hair metal thing, that was the only thing that pushed. Oh, we got to be as good looking as this band. We got to be as crazy exotic as this look. And it took away from that. Some of them were still good on stage, but the majority of them, and it's why most of those, even if they did have a hit song, they kind of died off. But then you had the bands from this whole area, you'd go see them and you're like, oh my God, they would be 3 or 4 bands and they'd just kill you.
They left it all on that stage.
Oh yeah. And we were all, and that was the thing. We did so many shows with Pantera and Ratch Out America and all those bands that Phil would be in, he'd be right there in front of me the whole show.
Terrifying.
It's awesome, Yeah, it's awesome because if you can get those guys out there liking it.
What band was this you was playing in at the time, or was it over various bands?
That was Forte.
Okay.
So we were like right at that edge that we were too heavy to be commercial and too commercial to be heavy, too fast to fall into the Pantera category because we had too many, ripping fast songs that even though there was singing, it still was harder to get that across to a label person. In Forte, that the last time I did with them, we had Warner Brothers used to do a video monthly. So they would pick 12 videos to be on it. You couldn't pay to be on it and it didn't matter. They'd pick all different labels and it was a subscription thing. So there was like 600,000 people that, every month got this video and we got picked to be on one. It was us. We were on one with Queensryche and Megadeth and Sick of It All. And it was awesome. But not only did we get picked to be on it, but they used our music during the opening credits. It's like awesome.
Right.
And all the stores were out of our CD and we couldn't get our label to go press 20,000 to restock because they didn't get it because they were in Germany. So they didn't get the whole how important it was over here. So everything that was our downfall is every time something that could have broke us would happen. We didn't have Atlantic or Capitol or somebody like that would go, oh, here, take this money. It was more of that, hold on, we don't, which has been a problem with several bands throughout my career, as well as anybody's. I mean, that's the difference between somebody that made it and didn't make it.
But it's the usual thing. Hindsight's a great thing. Like, oh, if we'd have done it this way.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. But, it falls into the whole thing of if you're doing it because you love playing music or if you're doing it to try to make it, there's such a big difference.
Exactly.
I mean, it's like playing at Vakin, 100,000 people there. That's awesome. But most of the bands that play there don't sell 100,000 records. They sell out before they announce it. So really, it's an ego thing. You walk out and you're like, whoa, these people love me. Reality is you go back home and go play in front of 35 people,
What was the first band you was kind of in where you felt it was getting traction and you at least felt for yourself like I could make a career of this? Was it when you started getting calls to say, oh, we need a guy for this tour?
The thing is I was in Forte. We played constantly because I did the country thing before it. There's this layer that gets on musicians where, oh, I only do this. I only play metal. I only play my songs. And once you get that stripped off of you that, okay, well, hey, playing music's playing music. If I have a choice between playing one of my songs or a Guns N' Roses song that everybody's been asking for and they want to dance for it, I'd probably play that. And I don't really like Guns N' Roses, but I'm being paid to play music. So it's kind of like being paid to play video games. So I at least had to like it enough sometime in my life to get good at it. So that's how I always look at it. And it doesn't matter. You can bombard people with your songs all day long. If they don't know them, you're going to get some fans. But if you give and take a little bit, here's one of my songs. Hey, I'm going to play, I used to love her, whatever, start doing this song because then it makes people, oh, wow, that was great. And then you play one, and that's a thing that actually you could see this in big bands. I mean, the Beatles did it early on, a bunch of covers on those out. Van Halen, they always have some kind of cover that they did their way. It sounded like Van Halen. All these great bands have done it. George Thorogood, who I work for, he made a career. I mean, he wrote several of his songs, Bad the Bone and all that were his, and he wrote them. But he's also made a career out of cover songs completely different, like Who Do You Love, songs like that. It doesn't sound like the originals.
It's like that give and take, isn't it? Figuring out what's going to keep you moving forward, I guess.
And, and it's that thing. You want to play what the people want. There was one disagreement I had a long time ago with Steelheart was we had an album out, Good to Be Alive, and it was great. Kind of heavy, a little heavier songs, but it still was in that same Led Zeppelin kind of vibe, especially with his vocals and everything. And it was good, heavy songs. And his girlfriend at the time, she kept pushing him, need to play more of the new stuff instead of the old stuff. And I kept telling him, the people come and want to hear the old stuff. I don't care either way. I'll play whatever, but that's what they want to hear. You stop playing those songs. And, we actually did about a year of doing, it'd be like 8 new songs in there.
But I bet you could get that vibe from the crowd as well. That it was.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. And then we kind of hit a point where we were actually going to separate it to where, okay, we're going to do Steelheart and we'll just do old stuff. And then we'll maybe come up with a different name, Matijevic, which was his last name.
Right. Yeah.
Something like this and do the more modern stuff. All right. That's a great idea. But the problem is
who's going to come out under that new name?
You're going to be in a van playing it.
Like I say, it's that give and take thing.
Yeah. And he's a smart guy. And it's hard because everybody's giving you advice. And even at that, it's still that hard thing when you have a band like that. You have all those songs from the Rockstar movie that he sang. You have the Steelheart stuff. You have the new stuff. So you have 3 categories to choose from, And it's like, okay, well, which songs do we get rid of? You're always going to make somebody mad. Rod Stewart did it the best years ago when he decided to do his songs in order that they came out. So if you were waiting on a song and it came out in 72 and he's now in 77, he ain't going to play it.
Amazing. How do you approach each project? Do you do it differently in regards to how you play and your sound for that specific project?
I play appropriately to the songs. I mean, it's funny because I actually underplay a lot of stuff, even though it seems like I overplay and I'm doing all this and doing this. I underplay a lot of stuff. Even playing with MSG, I had to go do some other shows. So I had Elliot, he was the owner of Dean. He came out and filled in on bass for some shows. So he had learned the songs and then he flew out to a show, go over them with me to make sure that he had them right. And then he did sound check with the band just so Schenker would feel more comfortable. I didn't realize how much I underplayed the songs until I was sitting there playing with him. And I was going, that's great. That's what's on there. Play it how you play it. Some stuff, it has to be to the song. Even though I love all the Steelheart songs, love playing, it's not really my type of music.
Did you have concerns about that going in, or was it a gig?
No, but that's the thing that's that layer I'm talking about that you peeled off whenever I played country, is that I realized I like old country, but a lot of the stuff we played, I didn't really like, but still, I enjoyed playing it. So actually, if if you're not overly excited about the stuff, it's better for you. Like say, if you obsess over a certain band, that's your favorite band. Oh, everything that Kiss does, everything they do, blah, blah. And then you get a chance to play with them. Then it's hard to put yourself in the same, okay, now you're in Kiss. I guess it would be the same as the starstruck thing. If you're really starstruck over somebody, your best bet is to not try to meet them because you don't want that.
You're going to shatter that illusion, probably.
Or you're going to shatter what they see in you because you're going to be, that's kind of the deal. So it's like any band that I would go into, it doesn't matter what kind of music. You play to the song, you play to that. You're going out and you're putting yourself in that group for that show, so it's no different. I have a show actually this weekend with the band Element. They're from Oklahoma. They were around in the 90s, like a Godsmack type band. So I'm just filling in for one show, and I'm excited about it, even though it's not really my type of music. I always like seeing these guys. I've known them since they were kids, but it'll be like I was in the band. Did the same with Texas Hippie Coalition. They're like a Pantera type. Everything's real heavy. And I did their Europe tour, and every now and then I fill in shows with them, and it's funny because I just go out. I seem like I'm in the band,
You've got a very strong stage presence, not just your playing, but your stage presence as well. Do you have to hold yourself back, or do that band know what they're getting?
Yeah, but I do it appropriate. So like if it's a band that, if they want that, like, that was the thing with Michael Schenker, basically any version of Michael Schenker that you're coming into as a bass player, you're really taking the spot of Pete Way, in my opinion. I mean, even though Chris Glenn, obviously played all those great bass lines on those songs all through the 80s, but still you're kind of in the overall picture. I always think of you're sitting in for Pete Way. And Pete loved the guy to death, but as a bass player, he was a better drinker. No, I mean, I love the stuff he played. I had the pleasure of becoming friends with him and everything, but his presence on stage, it added to that. So that's one thing Michael always loved, that I would be crazy. And then, so it's funny because the last tour that I did with Michael during the time that Herman and Francis were playing. So it was Herman, Francis, Michael, Doogie was singing, and Wayne. So they couldn't get visas for those guys. So me and Pete Holmes came in and did the American tour. And it was kind of funny because we had to play the songs like what they were playing, and not saying this in a bad way, but, we had to kind of play down from what we normally played. Like I wasn't singing backups as much because they didn't want to get used to something. And then after this 6-week tour, it's right back to that. They played the songs a little slower. A lot of the weird fills that he would do before he had to, actually go and do what Herman was doing. But it was funny because I got there and then I also realized, well, Doogie's a very crazy front man swinging his mic stand around. And I even told him, I said, don't worry, I'm not going to hit you. Because if I'm spinning around acting crazy, I'm always looking because I don't want to run into somebody and hit them because it hurts me more because I'm the car that gets impacted. So, we had this little thing. We had to watch each other and all this. But it was funny because we did a show and me and Doogie were both way up here. And Schenker usually doesn't like it. He doesn't care what you do around him. But if he's playing and you're up here, like drawing his attention, it's distracting.
He don't want something in the corner of his eye buzzing about him.
Yeah, he's like the guy that's that's shooting free throws and they're doing this behind it. He can't shoot. I'm not saying that he can't play, but it's just something that he didn't like. After the show, he was saying something about it. I said, hey, if you don't want me to move around, I won't move around. He's like, no, that's not what I'm saying. So the next day we're playing a show and it was just us, no opening band. And it was almost like a dinner kind of crowd, like everybody sitting at tables and the stage was real small. So there was nowhere to move anyway. So I just stood in one place the whole show. And Michael came up after and said, Rev, I do not like it when you stand in one place. It is not right. Please move around. But yeah, if you're hired to be the guy, you know what you're going into. I mean, I never try to take the attention away. If I'm taking the attention away from somebody, then they're not really doing something. I mean, if Michael's playing a solo and I'm right here jumping around acting like an idiot and somebody's watching me instead of him, then they're not interested in what he's doing. That's how it is anyway. If you're looking at somebody else and you're saying, oh, that's distracting me, well, you need to not go to concerts because the person that's fixing to pull their shirt off in front of you or yell out the name of the band, whatever, they're going to distract you too. There is those times. I did a tour in 2004 with the band Fuel. It was the original lineup. I filled in for the bass player while he had a baby and he was home with his wife. So I filled in for like 6 weeks. That was weird because I knew the band, but I didn't know any of their songs, wasn't even really familiar. And it was culture shock because the MSG crowd was like aging men balding wearing a Scorpion shirt. And then Fuel was like young college girls. And it was like culture shock. And the music was completely different, and I literally, before going on stage the first night, I'm thinking, what am I going to do on stage?
where do I fit in this dynamic?
I really didn't know what to do, and it just came out perfect. Yeah, and it just happened. I came out and I did the same thing I always do.
How is it joining these bands with already established fan bases? Is that cool for you to meet all these new fans and then hopefully be accepted by them? Is that good to get them into, I'm going to use the buzzword and say, get them into your brand?
Yeah, well, it's funny because the first 5 years I played with Michael Schenker, maybe first 4 or 5, something like that. It didn't matter who the drummer was. It was me and the drummer. The majority of the fans just hated us for some reason because they loved Barry Sparks and Shane Gallus, and they loved that. The first tour I did, Jeremy Colson was the drummer. He played for Steve Vai for a long time. Amazing drummer. One of the best drummers I ever seen. He was a little punk rock kid, spiked hair, tattoos. Then I had the stupid thing on my head spinning around and tattoos. So we were the guys that.
Where'd they drag these from?
Yeah, and they would always be like bad mouthing, and I just laughed about it. It's like being the heel at Championship Wrestling, they hate me. It didn't bother me, I still got a review from the first show I did with them, and this first song of the show was Into the Arena. So there's a bass solo and a drum solo in the first song, and we both just killed. And the review from the show was worst drummer and bass player I've ever seen. And I still have the cutout of it. It's like, that was awesome. The majority of them, it's like, if they're real fans, if they are the person that hates, I hate this lineup, I hate that lineup, then you're not a fan of the band. Then you're just a fan of those songs, because I can tell you 100% that most people that played on the records are not the people you think played on the records. Look at, and this is not bad mouthing Rudy Sarzo, but everything that he's known for, he didn't play on. He didn't play on those Quiet Riot songs that everybody thinks about, those videos. You had Chuck Wright playing on that. He didn't play an Ozzy on those records because Bob Daisley wrote all those songs.
It's all smoke and mirrors, sir.
Yeah, that was Neil Murray that played on the Whitesnake stuff. Even Tommy Aldridge, even though I know Tommy from Black Oak, Arkansas, Pat Travers and stuff, but what the majority of stuff that you think about him is Ozzy and Whitesnake, and neither one of them was him, because Ainsley Dunbar played on the Whitesnake, but you always think of Tommy as Still of the Night. But that's just how it is. And that's also a thing that kind of falls with the question that you were asking me, that it was a weird thing to get over, is when you're touring with somebody and then they come up, hey, will you sign this? And you're not on it. Wow, this is a UFO album. Then it took me a long time to kind of get over that, because I had to realize, okay, well, I'm in Greece. I just played a concert and this guy's getting to meet the band now. And he has this record. He doesn't care who's on that record. He just seen me play those songs. He wants that autograph. And once you think about it like that, it's easy. You're signed. They want your autograph. I seen this guy. Once you get that, then it's not weird. At first it was weird, but then it's great, because if they come up and you're not on it, you can pick the best looking guy and sign over him instead of, oh God, I'm going to be this guy.
Man, talking about names that play on albums, I'm going to bring things right up to date and wrap things up. We mentioned some of the guys who were playing on your new album: Bill Levity from Firehouse, Russ Parrish from Steel Panther. Do you give them any kind of guidance as what you want them to play, or is it just fun for you to get the music files and drop them in? Because you got the new album in the key of Z, which would be in the key of Z in the UK.
Yeah. Exactly. So I just sent them the song solo, or do what you want. Actually, the only two that were slightly different, Michael T. Ross played some keys, and he actually didn't just do the solo, but he played keys through the whole song. And he sent me I would say 8 different tracks of ideas that I actually, that's cool. That's cool. I picked through, and
those people make you sick.
Yeah. And it's cool. As for the solos, most of them were sent as is. I just said, do what you want. Like Rowan Robertson, his solo, he had sent me a couple of 3 or 4 takes, and it was all great. I could have used any of them. I actually pieced together, this. It kind of produced a solo in a way. Then I sent it to him and said, what do you think of that? And he's like, great. And I could have used any combination of it or any of the tracks. Since he offered, hey, because it is that way. I do that when I do bass tracks for people. I'll send them start to finish. This is how I play it. And here's a version that's less stuff, and here's a version that's more stuff. And then if you want to
mix it up,
whatever.
Can.
Yeah.
Speaking about that, I had Susie Quattro on the podcast a while ago, and I got in trouble.
Leather! Leather Tuscadero.
Yeah. I got in trouble because I asked her where she likes to fit bass in recordings, because I play bass and I like to put it on late in the day because I like to see where it fits with all the instruments. She was like, no, it's got to go down with the drums to make the foundation. Where do you sit with that?
Well, I had the weirdest way. The last thing I record is the drums.
Def Leppard style.
The whole entire album is done. All the vocals, everything is done. And then I do the drums. And for a couple of reasons. One, I mean, I think it gives the drummer a better thing, because if the drummer does an oddball part, it might be kind of hard to follow when he does it first, but it doesn't matter. He can do whatever and it's not going to throw off because he knows where everything is. So now there might be this big gap that he wasn't thinking was going to be there, that he could go ba 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 boom boom bop, you know. So that's one reason I do it. Another reason is because when I write the songs, I have a certain vibe or rhythm that's there, and unless me and the drummer were in the rooms working on it prior, you know, that could easily be gone by sending somebody the track, them recording it, then you replay into it later on down the road. You might go, that's weird, it feels weird here, and it's because you're now playing to him playing to you. But even though it's done last, even though it's to a click, you could never tell. I mean, if you listen to Jeff's drumming on these songs, he pushes and pulls all over the place, but so do I. So you have that great thing. And as for the guitar and bass, I don't even remember which ones I did first. Basically, I'll make a demo of the song. I'll program the drums, whatever, and then I'll put scratch tracks. And then once I get the song how I want it, then I just replace all the guitar, replace all the bass, which sometimes I don't even do that. Sometimes I leave backwash, especially. The majority of those songs were whatever I recorded on that original demo. I would go back and maybe fix a bass solo or change a part, but some of the vocals on the last album were one take on a handheld mic that I could never capture the same. I could re-sing it all day long, but it didn't have the same vibe.
That's got to be cool to listen back to, because you can feel that in the recordings. Like,
oh yeah. And that's a hard thing for a person that has to mix, because like on the Backwash album, the drums were done at 3 different sessions. The bass was pretty much the same sound, but slightly different here and there. Vocals were done on several mics, so Jim Dofka had to do a lot of work to make them all sound the right. Because if you mix these 5 and then you get to these, and these sound different. So this time is more consistent, because I recorded all the guitar, all the rhythm guitars within the same 2 days or whatever, and all the bass.
So it's all sitting as one cohesive thing.
All the drums were done in 2-day session at a studio, so it made that better. Even that being said, the songs are all so different from each other that you don't notice it, because some songs, drums were mixed a little different. Sean Berman did the mix. He mixed it accordingly to the song. That's why I had somebody do it instead of me, because I could have mixed it, but it would have been too much nitpicking.
You need that detachment from it. Get some fresh ears on it for sure.
And then being a bass player, first, the bass doesn't even, like, oh, that's great. That's fine. Being a singer secondary, I'm going to critique the vocals more when I shouldn't. When somebody else, an outside person, they're not thinking, they don't hear that same voice every day. They don't know how many takes I did. Maybe I should have done it like this.
They're just hearing it on straight face value.
Yeah, and that's the best way. I think that's a problem this day and age with people in studios. They tune everything. They sing it, and they'll go and tune it. It doesn't need to be tuned. Everything should be a little bit out. The Beatles, one of them were pitchy as hell when they would double each other, because you could hear 2 voices. Otherwise, you wouldn't hear 2 voices. That's beautiful. If you take something like that and you tune it, you lose that vibe. Just like if you go see a symphony, they don't have any frets. So they're all a little bit out from each other. Even if they're perfectly intonated, they're still a little bit out. Plus the rhythm between here, because here's where the song is over here. So that's what makes it so big and luxurious.
That human element. People are going to realize that 20 years from now when they listen back to the stuff.
Well, it's the same with drums. I know guys, they just trigger everything, and they use all these sounds. And it's like, well, why did you even play it? If you're going to do that, it'd be a lot quicker, less money to just program it. And the reason you don't want to do that is because you lose that vibe. Well, when you make these perfect sounds, you also lose the vibe of the room. When you listen to a Led Zeppelin album, that's mostly room mic. One reason you know it is because you can hear Bonham singing and grunting the whole time he plays. If you did it how you do today, that snare mic, you would never use it. Gone. Yeah, you're not going to use that, but that's what makes it so big. Boom, boom, pa, boom, God. It's that room.
Awesome, man. Rev, thank you ever so much for chatting with us, mate. I've loved it.
Thank you.
Congratulations on the new album. Any touring plans for it once things kind of open up? You got to do some shows, release shows or anything?
Well, I guitar tech for George Thorogood whenever I'm not playing. So November, December, I'm out doing that. So January, I had the whole month off. And I think again, March or April, there's like a month off. So I'm in the process now of trying to book some shows, see what I can get,
Get them booked in, because everyone's going to want to be gigging. So you're going to get all these calls to come out on tour. So.
My plan is it'll be Jeff Martin playing drums, obviously. And my plan is to use like either Jack Frost or somebody like that, Rowan Roberts, somebody that's on the record anyway, have them learn it. And then we'll probably also do maybe a Racer X song or Badlands or something to Jeff and whoever, if it's Jack, maybe do a Sabotage. Maybe a Steelheart song, because I usually do We All Die Young whenever I play. So, and we usually do that and an MSG song, like feels like a good thing,
Excellent. Well, get them booked in or you might get the Steel Panther call. You never know.
Yeah, exactly.
All right, dude. Love chatting with you. You take care. Enjoy the rest of your day, man.
Okay, thanks, man. I appreciate it.
Music's not what it used to be, just like a key of C. Things aren't what they seem. It's life in the key of C. Music's not what it used to be, just like a key of C. Things aren't what they seem. It's life in the key of Z.
Life in the key of Z.
Big thank you to Rev Jones for chatting with me here on the Straight to Video podcast. It was lots of fun, and I hope you'll check out everything he does over at revjones.com and give a listen to his new album In the Key of Z, which is out now. If you want to listen to over 100 more episodes of this show, which are just as fun as this chat, then visit stvpod.com, where you'll find everything you need along with some straight to video music, videos and merch all under one roof. And if you'd like to get more involved in the show, I want to invite you to join the Straight to Video Patreon page, which you can find at patreon.com/stvpod. Big thanks to everyone that has already signed up. I really do appreciate it. Alright, that's all for today's show. Hope you enjoyed it, and I'll be back in a couple of days with another new talk. So until then, thanks for the great support, and I look forward to doing it all again soon.